this is Daniel with TEXAS-TUK. In this video, I'm going to show you how to remove a carburetor from a Piaggio Ape. This model that we're working on is a 501, but it's the same process for any one of the Piaggios from the 70s to the 90s, whether it's a 501, 601, 400, they're all about the same as far as the process of how to remove a carburetor. So we're going to have to drop down behind the truck here where the engine is. I'm going to point out where the carb is and what you would have to do to remove it. All right, so let's go down here and look. Okay, so the first thing is there's a plastic cover. It goes right here, and I've already removed it. It's just about 6 screws that hold this plastic cover on. So I've taken the screws out already to get that out of the way. Now here's the carburetor. And the problem that I have come across trying to remove one of these is there's a set of nuts and bolts here and a set of nuts and bolts here into this adapter. These are almost impossible to get to the way it is sitting. You can't get these all the way out and you can't get these all the way out. So what I've found is the fastest, easiest way is to take the whole intake off of the engine. And there's 2 bolts there that is 11 millimeter. So you can go right here and grab this one easy and start taking that nut off. Well, there's another one, and this U bracket to the engine is in the way. Like you can almost get it, but then you can't. So again, the fastest way, because I've spent hours trying to get these off, and it's dang near impossible. And I found it's faster to go here. But to get to that back one, you have to move this bracket. So that's a 13 millimeter. There's 2 nuts right here. And you would start removing those nuts. And sometimes it will spin the bolt. So you need a 13 millimeter wrench to go back behind and hold it. So you would go in there and hold that so that you can take this off. You remove that U bracket. Then you can get to both of the 11 millimeter nuts, that one and you just remove the whole intake, the adapter, and the carburetor. You pull it all away. Now, what you're going to find out at the top, there's 2 cables attached. One is for the throttle and one is for the choke. And to remove those, you'll need just a flat screwdriver to take the top of the throttle slide off, and you need a 10 millimeter to take the choke off. Then you can remove the whole carburetor to take it apart and clean it, which we'll show you in the next video. All right, so follow us to the next video. Thanks. Hey, this is Daniel with TEXAS-TUK, and in this video we're talking about carburetors, how to take them off, how to clean them, why you'd want to clean it, and what the different parts do. So at the top of this video I talked about how to remove the carburetor when it was attached, and I talked about how these sets of nuts and bolts here were impossible to get to, so you would remove the intake and take all that away. Once you have that separated, you still have the top of these 2 things that you have to deal with. And I wanted to show you this carburetor real quick. Here's one of the reasons why you'd want to take a carburetor off. Over the years, just a little bit of gas and oil will get on the outside, and it's a magnet for just gunk and road dirt, and you get all this grime. And then on the inside, you have all these little bitty small jets. And fuel has to run through these jets. So all these little bitty tiny pinholes, if any of those get clogged with anything, it's going to make the car not run right, or run badly, or not run at all. And what happens inside a carburetor is old bad gas. It can turn into varnish. There could be trash or rust or any particles or just any old nasty crystallized gas inside will clog up a carburetor and won't run right. So one of the things you can do is in your area, if you can get non-ethanol gas, that's the gas that you want to be using in these. Non-ethanol is better for these older vehicles. All right, so we have the carburetor pulled away from the engine. You're going to see 2 cables coming out of the top. This first one is the choke cable. So in your cab, if you've pulled the choke, that's pulling up a little plunger and a spring that cuts off some air. The other one is your throttle cable. So as you're throttling, this is moving up and down. There's a slide inside that's giving it more gas or less gas. So you'll have to remove these to get the rest of the carburetor away from the car. So the first one is the choke. You need a 10 millimeter wrench, and you'll have to unloosen this here. Then you can finish unscrewing that by hand. It popped up because it has a spring in there. So when you pull all this out, what you have is the plunger, a spring, like that. And a good tech tip is just wrap tape around all that so you don't lose any of it. The plunger, the cable, and the spring, and just leave this all attached to the car like that. So you can tape it all up so you don't lose any of those parts. All right. The other part you'll have to undo from the truck is the top of the throttle slide. And there's 2 flathead screws holding that on. So you need a flathead screwdriver. You'll undo these screws. Just like that. And this also has a spring, so you're going to feel tension. You're going to feel it starting to pop up. And then you're going to take all of this out of the carb. And so what you have there is the throttle slide, a spring, this little top hat, all of this mechanism. So the same thing, you may want to put these 2 pieces aside so you don't lose them, the spring and the slide. And this will just stay hanging to the truck. Okay. So now you have the carburetor free. You can take that into the garage or the shop, or you can mail this into me and I'll clean it, rebuild it, and send you a new one. Or you can buy a brand new one from me and just take the old one off, put the new one on. Just depends on what you want to do. But these can be rebuilt and cleaned. Okay, so now we're looking at the carburetor. I want to point out some things. This is where air goes in, so you would have had the rubber air bellows attached here. You'd have to take that off. This side goes to the engine. All right. On this side of the carb, you're going to see a couple of screws with springs here. These do different things. The first one is the one towards the back. This is an air mixture screw. And what it does is regulating how much air and gas it's getting. So as you screw it out, it's going to get more air. It's opening up a passage. When you screw it in, it's closing that passage off and it's getting less air. So that's called an air mixture screw. This one, the bigger one, is actually for the idle. If you screw it in, the engine's going to rev up and it's going to idle higher. If you screw it out, it takes the revs down and the engine won't idle so fast. But what's interesting is I can show you, because I have a couple of parts, what's actually happening in the carburetor. So here's what happens when you're doing the idle screw. As you're screwing this in, it's touching this angled plate on the slide. So you screw it in, it pushes up the slide and it gives it more gas so it can idle or rev higher. If you undo the screw out, that's moving that down, makes the engine rev and idle lower, basically, idle speed. So these 2 pieces is what's happening when you screw in or screw out that. And when you're cleaning it, you want to take everything apart, take it all out. So this whole screw can come all the way out with the spring, but just know that that's what it does. As you screw it in, it's pushing that idle plate. The back one is air mixture. So again, that's opening or closing a little hole in the back, either giving it more air or less air. So you can take that out. Now you're going to notice one little brass jet right here on the outside. That's the starter jet. So you're going to take this out as well with a flathead screwdriver. I'm going to unscrew that. And the reason I'm taking all this apart is because I want to clean it all. Remember, there may be trash or old bad varnish gas inside all the little jets. So this little jet, you're going to take that out. There's little bitty holes in that jet. We have to clean all of these holes. So we take that little jet out. All right, this side where your gas fuel line was running to, which I forgot to mention, that's the other thing you'll have to pull off from the truck. And you want to clamp that off so you don't have gas flowing before you pull that off. Some people call this little mechanism the banjo. I don't know why it's called a banjo. That's just what people call it. But it has a flathead, or you can use the wrench, either one, to take that off. Let's see what it is. Yeah, it's a 10 millimeter. So you can do the 10 millimeter or a flathead. You undo that screw, and you're going to notice there's a little paper washer on that screw. And you can buy a rebuild kit from me that has new washers that seals all that up. All right. Then inside, you're going to find a little screen filter, a little screen mesh. You can pop that out. And it may be very dirty behind this, and this little screen mesh might be really dirty. If it's caught a lot of rust and trash over the years, this might be dirty. But it fits in there. It basically has its own built-in filter to catch trash. They're trying to catch it before it gets to your jets. Okay. So now we've taken everything off. The last thing to take off is the bowl. The bottom of the carburetor is what's called a float bowl, because there's a plastic float in here, and this is going to be full of gas. There's a big brass nut at the bottom. That is the size 14. It's 14 millimeter. So you got to remember, since European, we're dealing in millimeters. So we got all metric, not standard. All right, so 14 millimeter, you just unloosen that. Then you can hand screw this one out. And this actually has what we call the main jet. there's a jet here at the top that you can also take off when you're cleaning it, and it's the main jet. So you would unscrew this all the way out, and gas has to flow through that and flow through a little bitty pinhole. And that's, when they call it the main jet, what that means is that is running, when you're running the car, all the gas is running through this main stack, okay? So that will have to be cleaned. We're gonna take that apart. Then once you've taken that nut, the bowl can come off, and there may be a lot of dirty trash down in this bowl. We'll have to clean that out, so I'll talk about. Then you can see the rest of it. This plastic thing is a float, and it's attached with a little pin. So you need some sharp, pointy thing to push out that pin. You pull this little metal pin out, and you now can remove the plastic float, and there is a needle hanging on it that can also come off. If you buy rebuild kits, you can replace all of this stuff, but you've got to just look at it to see if it really needs to be replaced. What happens is it has a little rubber tip here at the end. It sits down in a small round orifice basically, and over the years that rubber can get worn down. If it get worn down, it will let gas flow all the time, and you'll get flooding issues. So this little bitty needle with a little bitty rubber tip can be replaced if it has a worn ring. All right, so the little needle and the float, those two things go together like that. All right, so when you're taking all this stuff apart, you might have a little bowl or a clean paper towel where you can put it all so you don't lose all these parts. All right, the last thing to take out is another jet in here, which is an idle jet. Again, it's just a flathead. You just unscrew it just a little bit, and then you can finish unscrewing it by hand. And it's a longer jet, but it also has a series of pinholes. There's little pinholes here. There's a little hole there. So now it's all taken apart. We've got the carb body. We've got all the pieces and parts. Everything has to be cleaned. If you look at this carburetor and you really start studying it, there's little holes everywhere, and that's where the gas is flowing in and out of all of this. Gas is flowing through that, through that, through that. If you look down in here, there's holes that gas is flowing through. There's holes here. So everywhere gas has got to be flowing, everything has to be cleaned and cleaned out. So what we got to do to clean it, you're going to need some carburetor cleaner. And you can buy it at Walmart. I even buy some at the dollar store. I have a dollar store down here. Anything that says carbon choke cleaner, that's what you're going to want to use to clean it. You are going to want rubber gloves because you don't want to get this on your hands. It kind of stings. The other thing I use is compressed air. I have an air compressor with a little nozzle that I'll spray things. And I also bought one of these cool little things at Harbor Freight. So it was a little cheap version of an ultrasonic. Once I clean everything with carb cleaner and compressed air, I also put it in this with soap and water, and it vibrates and it heats up. And the reason why we do that is because deep inside the body, I can't get in there. There's no way to manually clean all the way through. So when you soak this in an ultrasonic cleaner, it will clean all the insides of those little passages. All right. So these, are pretty cheap. You order you one on Amazon or go to your local Harbor Freight and get you one of these. Another tool I'll use lots of times to clean is a Dremel with a little wire brush on the end. This is good for cleaning all this crud off the outside, kind of getting it all polished. I also can use it in here, anywhere that it can reach, I can just kind of polish and get a lot of scale and old dirty grime off. So this thing works really well. I also use a wire wheel on a bench grinder to clean off a lot of junk. All right. Grab this. Another handy thing is a piece of wire, and you strip it, and you'll have a couple of little strands here. And what I do with these is run them, after I've cleaned it, I put them inside these holes just to make sure that I've got everything out of the little bitty pinholes. So here in the end, I run it through, I look to see that I can get it through there, making sure that I've cleaned all these little holes. So that's what that's good for. Another thing is you can just hold it up to the light, and if you can see daylight through your little pinholes, you've cleaned it good enough. There's even little pinholes on the side of the main jet there. All right, so what I'll do is I'll hold each one of these pieces with rubber gloves. I'll spray carburetor cleaner in it, then I'll use the air compressor and blow through air, then I'll put it in the ultrasonic and I'll let all that soak. And just remembering how you took everything out, took it all apart to put it all back together. So like, again, little bitty jets, little bitty holes. I'll use wire, just 1 or 2 strands of the wire, and I push that in there, kind of spin it around so that I can see that I've gotten all that junk out of there. So what is our friend on cleaning all this stuff? Carb cleaner, compressed air, ultrasonic, a little wire brush to clean the outside surfaces. And then you can buy rebuild kits that have all new little washers. You can get new floats and new needles if you want, but most of the time you don't need all of that. You can just clean it really well and put it all back together. Or you can send it to me here at TEXAS-TUK and I'll clean it for you and send it back to you, or trade you out and send you you know, a new one, a new carburetor that you can buy from me. All right, so that's it. That's kind of carb 101, jets, bad gas, all that good stuff. Thanks for watching. We'll check us again.